Hello and welcome everyone to Forge and Foster's third quarter commercial real estate market update. My name is Ben Ames. I'm at Forge and Foster, and I'm joined by our lead Alex Manilovich, who will be going over a huge quarter for real estate. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Ben. Always great to be part of these Q updates.
We're excited for this, I believe.
Yeah, very good quarter.
Awesome. Excited to get into it. And also very excited to be joined by a couple of great guest speakers. Something that's quite interest today for Hamilton and the surrounding area. We're lucky to be joined by Kelly Anderson, Senior Manager of Community Engagement at METROLINX. Prior, Kelly was the City of Hamilton's Manager of Communications and Engagement for the Hamilton Light Rail Transit Project. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Ben. We're happy to be here today.
Happy to have you. As well, we also have Jessica Scott with us today. Jessica is METROLINX's Community Relations and Issues Specialist for Hamilton and Niagara. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So obviously, everyone quite interested in the downtown LRT project, and we about METROLINX and about the LRT in downtown Hamilton. But first, the real estate quarterly updates continue to get busier every presentation, and this third quarter of 2021 is no different. So we're excited to jump in and here to give us an update on the numbers and a glimpse of the future in our city and surrounding areas. Alex Manilovich, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And just like Ben mentioned, it was a very exciting and fruitful quarter. But as always, especially in this time where we're still living through the pandemic, we're going to look at a few things about how the commercial real estate market in Hamilton has been affected since the pandemic, and then also what's, I guess, the view forward for the remainder of this year. So it was a very, very big quarter. As you see at the very bottom there in the copper color, we had $434 million worth of commercial real estate trade in Hamilton. Absolutely magnificent number. And you compare that to last year of Q3, we had $322 million worth of commercial real estate, which in and of itself is a massive number. And then looking at the previous quarter, just this summer, we had $277 million worth of commercial real estate. So really eclipsing, even if you want to look at it at a quarter by quarter basis or a year by year basis, the commercial real estate transaction volumes that we've typically see. And I would say, like, on average, we're about $250 million per quarter is the average what we see. So to have 434 in this previous quarter is absolutely incredible. And when we look at it for every other quarter that we've seen since 2017, it's the largest quarter on record in Hamilton. So absolutely stellar, especially in a time where we are kind of going through COVID and really sort of still navigating what I guess the typical nature is of the commercial real estate industry. And then when we look at other previous Q3s, which are kind of highlighted in a lesser yellow color, it's obviously, since it's the largest quarter on record, it's bigger than any Q3 that we've seen. And as if you can kind of notice a pattern that we usually see for every year, the Q4 is the largest quarter typically that we see in a year end. So if this is a pattern that we're going to see for the continuation of 2021, we're going to see potentially a larger quarter volume for the remainder of the year, which is absolutely fantastic. So we usually see, as I mentioned, an average about $250 million of commercial real estate trade in Hamilton, which provides about an average of $1 billion. So we're approaching $1 billion right now. So it's not going to be a question of if we're going to hit $1 billion, but it's going to be more of a question of how much are we going to pass $1 billion for this year. And last year we saw a record for an annual total hovering around 1.2 billion. So the question again goes to, if we're going to pass 1.2, I believe we are. And it'll be, I guess, knock on wood to see if we eventually reach that total, if we surpass it, and see really how things shake up for the rest of the year. And a pattern we've also been seeing throughout the quarters and throughout the years is that we've seen values increase, we've seen transaction totals increase, but transaction totals have actually lessened. So that really shows that values have increased even though we've seen less transactions actually take place. However, this Q3 was very, very busy. We usually see transaction totals for a quarter kind of be around 75. You kind of see how we saw Q2 of the last quarter then be around 77, about the average, or a little slightly average, 69 for the previous last year, a little bit below, but we're above transactional volumes for this past quarter. This next graph is a little bit hard to decipher, but what I really want to focus on here is these are the number of transactions per month throughout the various years that you see in various colors. But again, I want to focus on 2021, which is a bright red color, and then 2020, which is a bit more of that burgundy color. You can see how COVID really impacted 2020, how in March and April, when we had the first lockdown and transaction volumes just really halted. We've seen huge lows in 2020, and then it really picked back up in July, which is a really big month usually that we see. And then it really followed common transactional patterns. But in 2021, had a massive July, one of the highest in records for transactional volumes. We went back down in August to a low, but nothing too uncommon that we usually see for August. And then September had a really big September. So that plays in part to how we saw a really big quarter, not just for dollar volumes, but for actual transactional numbers as well. And again, if we see very typical transaction volumes for October, November, and December, we're going to hit over $1 billion worth of commercial real estate for Hamilton, and it'll be a record year again. So where is this going? What types of asset classes? So in white, we'll see the transactions that took place last year, and in the yellowish color, we'll see transactions that took this year. So the big two winners for this year are land ICI, which is industrial, commercial, institutional land, and then industrial in and of itself. And you can see the big winner last year, which was really pulling it, that over $300 million mark, was multi-residential. Here, not so much in this quarter, but that really just speaks to how strong an asset class the multi-residential is. Wasn't really a big player this past quarter, and still we had the record for this past Q3. And you look at every other asset class, it's fantastic to see. Still very healthy, just kind of muted between these huge numbers that we're seeing with the ICI and industrial multi-res from last year. But residential land, overall growth over $50 million. That's fantastic to see. Mixed use, retail, and office. Mixed use has always kind of stayed the same, so nothing crazy there. But I'm really excited to see that retail and office has really seen big upticks. Those are two asset classes that have had big question marks, or some people have really slated those to be maybe asset classes that are very risky or not seeing investments. And now you're starting to see, as we're starting to get a little bit more through the pandemic, that those asset classes are places where people are starting to invest again, versus what you see, even, for example, in office of last year where no one was investing in it. So this is a trend to keep an eye on. And I think people are going to start realizing that these two, retail and office, have been undervalued during the pandemic. And now you're going to start seeing a little bit more investment in these two asset classes as well. So what I typically do is I show the top 3 transactions that occurred in Hamilton. But since this was just a very record year or a record quarter, I'm going to go through even the top 6. So here are the 6, 5, and 4 in those orders. And I'll just go through as quickly before I get into the top 3. The first is One Head, and again, really kind of going in that theme that we've seen, how industrial and land ICI is really the big players for this year. So One Head, industrial property, and Dundas, we were the sellers in this one, selling for $123 a square foot. Fantastic selling point, I believe. And then 449 Mohawk Road East. This is located on Hamilton's Mountain, on a busy intersection. This is a Walmart. So with these, you can see massive land, massive parking lot, sold to local group New Horizon Development for $16 million, selling for almost $1.6 million an acre. Which really leads me to believe it's going to be something of a sort of like a townhouse development. That's what we typically see for those price points in Hamilton. However, they had a fairly recent purchase of a piece of land for a very similar size for that price point, and they're really proposing something of a higher density. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if something gets proposed, something in a similar vein to what we see across the street from there, from those taller multi-residential buildings. So really exciting to see what becomes of that. And then 590 Nash Road, $19 million purchase by Torquest Partners, selling or purchasing for almost $80 a square foot, which is a great purchase price. And this is located, as you can see, in the east end, close to Confederation Park, right off the 403. So lots of pluses with that acquisition as well. But for the third most expensive transaction that took place, I feel like we always talk about one of these every quarter, but it's right by the airport. purchased by a bigger major player, Pure Industrial REIT, some ICI land, purchased for almost $600,000 an acre, which is great to see. You're seeing the market valuations for industrial land just really bump up. It is zoned M9 Airport Reserve, which is only allows storage. So I imagine you're going to have to do some rezoning to accommodate more typical industrial uses. But really great to see that. As we saw in the previous quarter, just in the bottom here, we saw Fengate purchase this piece of land, also zoned M9 Airport, also adjacent to the airport as well. And just fantastic to see what eventually those two projects are going to become, as we're starting to see the Amazon facility by Panattoni being built and coming to fruition. And even last quarter, DHL building their sorting facility, which was over $100 million. So lots of investment headed into this area. Second largest transaction of the quarter, we're proud to be part of for $34 million. Fortune Foster purchased this flex space industrial, almost retail type plaza and asset class located at Stony Creek in Hamilton's East End. Fantastic position as well, being close to the water, being close to really interesting developments like 310 Francis, which are going to be some of the largest towers in Hamilton, if not the largest towers, if all things are said and done. And then also there's something unique about this site is that it has two different varied industrial zonings, which really can accommodate any type of use. So really excited to have that in our portfolio now. But the largest transaction was by Alberta Investment Management, AIMCO, a huge player in Canada. It's for 140 Garner Road East, and this is also very close to the Hamilton Airport. You can see part of Highway 6 just really transitioning into the link in the 403 to the north there, and just a big parcel of land, purchasing for $220,000 an acre, which is a fantastic purchase. I'm sure there's going to have to be some rezoning and servicing included into that purchase price, but 172 acres, just absolutely massive plot of land. And it's also located in what's traditionally known as agricultural zoned land right now. It's located in the White Belt, so that might provide some tea leaves about the conversation for Hamilton's urban boundary expansion if it's going to eventually absorb the White Belt as it's known today. So fantastic purchase. As you can see, $38 million is a huge transaction, but it's not some of the giants we've seen in the past that go for 50 million plus, $75 million, even $100 million. So even great to see something that's, even though it's a giant, not the tallest of the giants, but to help be part of a record year with not having a huge outstanding transaction is also in and of itself a great commendation towards this past quarter. Some of the news, again, airport, a big point of focus for investments. And I mentioned at the just earlier that Panattoni is building a massive $1 million square foot facility for Amazon, and then InFarm is going to be building or expanding their facility to become North America's largest vertical farm. And we're seeing lots of these types of stories pop up in and around the airport. And with further purchases by Pure Industrial REIT, Fengate, as I just mentioned, it's going to be great to see what other types of businesses and investments start to fall in line with Hamilton. This is an interesting graph. I just kind of set through LinkedIn and just kind of really showing how all this investment is coming, why we're seeing a record quarter. A lot of it, as I mentioned, is the engine of Toronto, and it's really facilitating a lot of Southwest Ontario. And I'm just showing you a quick development about the existing construction and the proposed construction of all of these buildings that are coming to facilitate this growing population. So we're going to need investments to house people. Literally, we're all very aware of the residential necessities we need, and then also employment, of course, conversely, to accept that. And then just RLB, they do, I think, a biannual index of all the cranes that are active in North America. They look at these specific cities, and Toronto, you can see in the right here, has 225 active cranes as of Q3 of 2021. That's more than any other city combined in North America that RLB looks at. So just absolutely outstanding to see the level of activity that's still occurring in Toronto, even though we're in a pandemic like other cities, of course, in North America, but hasn't slowed it down one bit. If anything, it's actually grown. And Hamilton, in part, is seeing the ripple effects of this level of construction. And we touched on this last year or last quarter, but it's the fastest ever. The city's received $1 billion worth of building permits for 2021. This was done just at the end of June. We usually see this at the end of the year. Last year, it was achieved in the fall. So we're kind of beating it by a quarter this year. So just incredible to see the level of activity that's entering this market. And again, huge levels of investment from the levels of from different levels of government, We're seeing investments towards the airport. Public transit is being over $300 million being invested into that. That does not include the LRT or the train. And then also a huge government support towards DeFasco, over $400 million to, I guess, make sustainable production of steel. And that's a total project worth of $1.7 billion there. So huge investments, and this is all investments from this previous quarter. So some developments I'm going to touch on that were announced and proposed this past quarter. These are not all of them, but these are some of the key ones. There was lots of developments proposed. But the first one that's the people from Hamilton might recognize is parking lots right behind Landmark Place. 42-story and a 38-story tower is being proposed. Almost 800 residential units just down the street from the downtown GO station. And you can even see in the background there, Rancor's building on Walnut and Main. So lots of development that's happening in the area. And then just to the left of there is the Royal Connaughts Phase 3 project as well that's being proposed. And that should be coming online hopefully this fall. Also 213 King Street West. This is, as I just mentioned, Rancor. They're developing this building on the corner of Caroline and King. 30 stories proposed, a mix of residential and hotel. So just fantastic to see more density in the core of Hamilton. Also announced is 41 Wilson Street. Huge project by First Avenue Council. They kind of first came on the scene in Hamilton with 1 Jarvis and 3 30 stories, almost 1,000 units. Also located right in the heart of downtown. Southeast of that corner is another proposal by, I believe, Canef. So lots of stuff happening there. Also very close to NH's development of the city center, and also around that area of James Street North, and where Hugh Peg is going to be investing over $500 million to upgrade and do developments around the entertainment facilities of Hamilton. So lots of exciting news there. And then lastly, I mentioned New Horizon Development Group, how they purchased that Walmart on the mountain. And I also mentioned how they purchased for a similar price point property in Hamilton. And this is that where they purchased it for about $1.6 billion an acre. This is in the East End. It's the former Brock University campus in Hamilton, located near the Red Hill Valley. But as you can see, it's going to be a low-rise development. It's going to be something that are proposing a more mid-rise. It's going to be 4 12-story towers with 4 4-story stacked homes on the sides there. 1,400 units, and it'd just be a major development, especially in this area that's not located to the core. It doesn't typically see new development, and you're seeing that anywhere you can find a parcel of land that can accommodate any sort of density is going to be looked at in Hamilton now, and it's not just funneled towards the downtown. Other exciting news before I pass it on to Ben is, and I'm sure that our guest speakers are going to get into a little bit more, is like really exciting news that LRT, as you can see the CBC headline here, near certainties as councillors to sign binding agreement. And you can see on the right there, the mayor and various representatives of various levels of government did sign the MOU, and we're really excited to see what next steps are there. And almost just as exciting as all-day GO train station coming to Hamilton, which is now arrived at the West Harbour GO station. And we're really excited to see, it's already been a few weeks, it's been enacted, but really excited to see what the future holds as this area continues to grow. We're really excited about the West Harbour. So that's it for me, and I'll pass it back to you, Ben. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Alex. Good to see some more development in the core coming, some more density to our downtown. Interesting quarter. Good to see a little more diversity in terms of more transaction, other asset classes, land and industrial asset classes. How do you think that's going to impact the multi-res / residential market going forward? It's a good indicator for future growth in that asset class, or is it kind of more maybe of a year's standpoint?
Sorry, Ben, you kind of cut off a little bit there, but if I caught your question correct, I think you're asking about the low maybe transaction numbers for multi-res, and I think that's just an anomaly for this year. Even in and of itself, I think it just looked a little bit shorter, even due to the monster figure that we saw comparative to last year. Multi-res is still a very strong asset class, and Hamilton's not a stranger to see that as well. We actually had a very large transaction take place this past week, and that'll pop up in the Q4 updates, and it's going to eventually, of course, pop up in the annual numbers as well. So I don't think multi-res is going anywhere. I don't think it's being impacted by industrial purchases, if that was also part of your question. And I think we're going to start to see a little bit more now, as we're going to start to see land become more of a typical transaction, as just regular assets just being purchased at a volume I don't think it's going to be sustainable, at least from a value add perspective. Maybe people will still purchase assets from an income basis, which maybe is what the basis is for a lot of multi-residential transactions. But I think that we just need assets, as that one graph showed about all the crane index in Toronto, for both, not just residential, but for employment space in the form of industrial. So I think it's going to continue going into growing figures for Hamilton and Southwest Ontario.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Sorry about the technical difficulties here, but you did get the gist of my question, so appreciate that answer. Awesome. So with that, very excited to hear more from the METROLINX team, and so we'll hand it over to Kelly Anderson for some more information from them.
Thanks so much, Ben. Exciting to see all the exciting progress in the city in terms of development as well. Alex, do you mind just going to the next slide? We'll do a quick introduction while you're reading about our mission and vision at METROLINX. So I'm Kelly Anderson, Senior Community Engagement Manager with METROLINX for Hamilton and Niagara. So the biggest project that we're working on right now is Hamilton LRT, which we'll get into shortly. But we also do engagement around GO expansion and any other sort of transit project that METROLINX has going on. And we'll touch on some of those today. And Jessica, do you want to give a quick, I know you sort of introduced yourself already.
That's right. Hi, I'm Jessica Scott, Community Relations and Issues Specialist for the Hamilton and Niagara region, including Hamilton LRT project.
Yeah. And so Jessica and I both live in Hamilton, so it's extra exciting to be able to work on some of these projects and see how the community is growing and thriving. And so we're going to get into some of the project overviews next. If you can advance the slide, Alex. So just a quick overview in case some of you aren't familiar with all the different facets of METROLINX business. So we operate GO Transit, buses and trains, obviously. We operate the Up Express to Union Pearson. And also operate the Presto payment system as well. And we're undertaking the largest transportation investment in Ontario's history right now to get people around faster and easier and more convenient ways while operating these systems as well. And I can say I worked for the city for most of my career, the city of Hamilton, and I transitioned to METROLINX during the pandemic. And although ridership certainly decreased due to the pandemic, I can tell you it has been such a busy 2 years at METROLINX. Just we're planning and building a lot of projects all over the GTHA for future growth and for the next sort of 40 to 60 years. So that is really exciting to see, even though it's been a tough year for ridership, or tough 2 years. It's never been as busy as it is now. And in fact, this week we just extended rail service into London, Ontario, which was exciting. That's a bit of a pilot project that we're exploring. So certainly an exciting time right now at METROLINX. You can advance the slide, please. So again, I mentioned I live in Hamilton. I worked for the city for most of my career, and I feel like despite the pandemic struggles that we've experienced, 2021 has been a pretty exciting year for transit in Hamilton. So we had 3 really major transit funding announcements this year, starting with the Hamilton LRT funding commitment from the feds and the province in May, $3.4 billion investment to build the LRT. There was also the hourly service announcement to West Harbour GO, which was super exciting. And then there was a municipal announcement, I believe it was in late summer as well, for HSR service enhancements. And one of the lines in particular they were looking at increasing service to was the A line between the airport and the waterfront. And certainly that line will integrate well with our West Harbour service, GO service, as well as the LRT. So it's certainly been an exciting year, and looking forward to continuing that momentum and building on that. And even the development projects that you highlighted before our presentation, just all of that working together is like all these puzzle pieces are coming together, and it's just a really exciting time for Hamilton. So we'll go to the next couple of slides and start talking about LRT, which is the biggest project we're working on right now. And so Alex noted this earlier, so it's a go. Very excited to share. It's moving ahead. The memorandum of understanding was signed by all the parties in September. And we're working with our partners at the City of Hamilton to reestablish a joint project team. So they're looking at staffing up on their side as well. And we, like we did in the past before the project was paused, we deliver the project together. And I'll just, for some of you that might be new to the project, I'm sure most of you have heard about this before in the past years, but so the project is about bringing modern light rail vehicles. They'll be on tracks separated from the rest of traffic, and it'll offer frequent and reliable service between McMaster University in the west, through the downtown, all the way to Eastgate and Stony Creek. And there's it's a 14-kilometer route, and there's 17 stops. This went through the environmental assessment process back in 2017, so it's all approved and ready to go. So we're in a shovel-ready position, and in one of my next slides, I'll be talking about, we already actually are doing some visible work in the corridor that you'll see. A couple other things to highlight on this route map. So there's a little square that's green and yellow. That's our operations, maintenance, and storage facility. We've acquired land at McMaster Innovation Park. That was before the project paused. That land has been acquired for that facility. And also wanted to just note that the LRT corridor is just a few minutes away from the Hunter Street GO station. And we expect that there'll be connections to the West Harbor GO station through HSR service as well from the corridor in the future. And eventually the Confederation station will be a link from the Eastgate Square end as well in the future. Next slide. So I won't read out all of these bullet points, but generally, this is a transit project. Of course, it's about getting people out of their cars and providing more transit options, integrating well with HSR service and the bike share program and GO service, interregional service as well. But it's not just a transit project. This one's a little bit more unique to METROLINX, that it's also an economic development project. And so there's a lot of economic uplift already going on, and Alex spoke to a lot of it on the corridor or near the corridor, which is really exciting. And we know that there's more to come, and certainly Waterloo has been a great success story, what we're seeing there when they implemented their LRT project. And so oh, perfect. I was just going to ask you to switch that. So we mentioned the MOU was signed by all parties in September. We've acquired 60 properties of 90 that we need for this project. And so many of them have been sitting vacant for a few years. So we started demolitions last year around this time. We've completed demolitions of about 23 vacant buildings on the corridor, and there's more that are going to happen, about 12 or 13 more later this fall, November, December into next year as part of the next phase. So you will see active work going on in the corridor this fall. And then in terms of timelines, because we're just sort of reinitiating the project, we don't have really detailed timelines yet. And as things evolve, we're certainly happy to come back and provide more updates. But right now we're looking at early works construction, which would be utility relocations, starting probably next spring sometime. And that's just to get all that kind of work out of the way before we start the main construction project. And that procurement of that main portion is expected to be released. The RFQ would be released to bidders sometime next year, and we'll have more details on that soon, hopefully. Okay, next slide. So Jessica's going to cover some of the exciting GO expansion and service updates for Hamilton.
Thanks, Kelly. So we've touched on a bit of the highlights and the major announcements for increasing service in Hamilton, especially at our West Harbor GO station. So two-way all-day service began in August of this year. Weekday service out of the West Harbor GO begins at 5:13 in the morning, and the last train out is at 10 p.m. So that's both ways in and out. And this is through our collaboration with CN Rail. So they're the company that owns the tracks west of Aldershot. So we've built major infrastructure to allow for more train service along the Lakeshore West GO line. More work is planned to enhance the service at this station, as well as the future Confederation station in Stony Creek, and then eventually beyond into the Niagara region in the coming years. Increases to service are subject to an agreement with our rail partners, and I can show you, kind of give you a highlight of that on the next slide. So they own all of the tracks west of Burlington. So our goal is to continue to work closely with them to introduce incremental train services to West Harbor, Confed, Stony Creek, and further out beyond Grimsby into Niagara. You can go to the next slide. So these are a couple of the highlights for how we have started ramping back up service towards a post-COVID world. So we've reinstated our eastbound express train trips out of the Hamilton Go Center on Hunter to Union Station, and then those 4 afternoon westbound trips back into Hamilton. Bus service, so the express number 16 route, a really popular service that provides all-day Go service out of the Hamilton Go by bus, has resumed. We've also added a new stop at Brock University earlier on when the school resumed, connecting the university to an existing Go bus route that serves the Niagara region and also into West Harbor. We're also very excited to reinitiate our weekend and holiday rail service to Niagara, which has been really popular as folks start to explore the region a little more. And this image here, so if you see the train, there's a split in the tracks. So on the one side, we have CP rail, and on the other side into West Harbor is CN rail. So this is a pretty significant pinch point in our network. So we've done a lot of work to improve that infrastructure and work with those partners in order to facilitate scheduled service, because they operate quite differently from passenger rail. So that's been a significant step in the direction of providing more service in and out of Hamilton. So the future Confederation Go Station, METROLINX has adopted a market-driven approach to delivering new infrastructure across the network. And we have decided to build a self-service rail station at the future Confederation Go site. So the timeline is still to be determined for construction of that station. However, we do currently serve with a park and ride with a number of spots for people to drive in, catch the bus, and that bus connects with the Lakeshore West at Burlington Go Station. Next slide. On to you, Kelly.
Okay, this is a project that's still pretty early in the planning stages, but I wanted to highlight it today because it does touch on Hamilton. So it's called the Dundas Street Bus Rapid Transit Project, and we've been doing a lot of engagement on this in the last few months. So I wanted to mention it today. So it's like I mentioned, it's sort of in the early planning stages, but we're evaluating a proposed transit corridor along a 48-kilometer stretch of Dundas Street from Highway 6 in Waterdown, all the way through Halton and Mississauga, linking to the Kipling Transit Hub in the city of Toronto. And we've been working really closely with the municipalities on this corridor, on this planning project, and in Hamilton specifically, and Halton too, actually. There's already many municipal class environmental assessments that have been completed in previous years for road improvements that could potentially support the introduction of a shared HOV or bus-only lane on this corridor. So as I mentioned, it's not a project that's being implemented just yet. It's in the early planning stages, and we just finished our second public information center a few weeks ago, and the next round of engagement would be in January. But certainly this is one to just keep in mind in the future, and hopefully we'll have some more updates on it once the engagement process is over. And that is the end, and I think Jessica's just gonna highlight this one.
Thanks, Kelly. So if there are any questions or you'd like to stay connected with the Hamilton and Niagara Community Relations Office, you can email us at hamilton@metrolinx.com. You can also sign up for our regional email newsletter. You can select any region from across the network to get news about what's happening in those areas. So you can sign up at metrolinx.com/Hamilton. There's a little sign up bar, and you can choose by region what you'd like to hear more about in your inbox. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Hamilton LRT, so we share any of our blog posts, news, construction updates through those channels. And we also have a METROLINX news blog, so you can subscribe blog.metrolinx.com, and that's also stories, progress, and announcements from across the network.
Awesome. Thank you. That was very, very informative. We're very excited for some of these projects to get underway, and and certainly will make a tremendous impact to both commuters and then the downtown community. I guess apart from kind of regular updates or kind of just checking in with the community, are there any specific kind of support areas or looking for from either Hamilton or kind of surrounding areas for any of your projects? Is there anything that you're looking to the community on?
I think business support is going to be an important part of this project. It always has been, but now, with small businesses bouncing back after COVID, that's certainly an area that we're going to be focused on. And we're working with the Chamber of Commerce and BIAs and any other partners that want to come forward and kind of come up with innovative strategies to help support the businesses that are along the corridor that are going to be going through construction eventually, when we have more details on that. The other thing is we're working on, or we started working on it before the project was paused, but a sort of construction mitigation strategy for how people can get around during construction. And we were looking at transportation demand management, or TDM, initiatives that we could focus on. So there might be some things like that. And I mean, these plans will continue to evolve. We're still just kind of getting back up and running, but I think just getting ready for construction, getting businesses ready, being able to support them while they're under construction, and continuing to visit our favorite restaurants and coffee shops and things like that are maybe going to be a little inaccessible for a while. And we don't know the construction details just yet, but I think that's something we definitely would be looking for support on.
For sure. I think it's probably a pretty common concern that you hear, just in terms of the impact that it could have on the small business areas in the core. The downtown Hamilton BIAs are definitely aware of it, and they do a good job of their small business constituents where they can. So
Absolutely.
Some projects that are coming up to help. I guess coming out of COVID, how have you found? Hopefully we seem to be getting out of it now, but how have you found ridership in the last little while, especially with the new schedules that have opened up coming in and out of Hamilton?
Yeah, we've heard it's definitely building back. It's slow, of course, but it's building back. And I think we saw an increase, a bit of a jump in September, when a lot of people were going back to school, and some people were going back to offices. And so it's continuing to grow slowly, which is great. And we're seeing it creep up a lot more on weekends, because people are using the GO train to get to events like Blue Jay games, or festivals or concerts and that kind of thing. So it's really great to see some people that are still working from home are using it for leisure activities now more than ever. So I think it'll still take a little while, but certainly there's a number of safety initiatives that METROLINX is taking, and safety is one of the things that we prioritize the most. So hopefully people feel safe riding on the trains. There's dividers between the seats now, and there's sanitizer at all the stations and on the trains themselves, and they're cleaned a lot. And so it's definitely a safe experience, and we're seeing the ridership grow for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that was actually my next question, just in terms of the safety aspect. Is there anything that you recommend for travelers to do or to prepare as they're kind of going into those environments?
We do have like a list of 40 safety activities that we take, or measures, I should say. If anybody wants to, check that sort of before they ride to kind of feel comfortable, but know that you're going to need to wear a mask when you're riding, unless you have some kind of exemption. And just, I would say, plan ahead as much as possible. Look at the train schedules ahead of time, and just kind of get comfortable with where you're going, and try and stand apart from people while you're waiting for your train and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a pretty great experience. And I actually took the train out of the West Harbor Station for the first time this summer, which was pretty cool. So anybody who's watching that is based in Hamilton, I highly encourage you to do that. It's pretty neat to see the city and the waterfront from the train. It's an area we haven't had access to in so long. So it's pretty cool. I would suggest that you take it if you can.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I guess last question here on our end. You talked a bit about the McMaster Innovation Park and just the area there. for those who might not know, maybe could you just explain a little bit more, kind of what you can about what might happen over there in that area, and what the kind of plans are there?
Yeah, so we acquired space there a few years ago to build our operations and storage and maintenance facility. So this is the facility where the trains will start their day and end their day, and they get, their maintenance happens there, and then they're stored. The trains that we aren't using on a given day get stored there. So it'll be sort of a warehouse kind of facility, but it'll look a lot nicer. And we actually have some renderings that I could have shared today if I thought about it, but in the future we'll come back and share those. So it would be that kind of a facility, like a maintenance, cleaning, storage type facility. And so I think we're still figuring out the logistics of how the trains get from the corridor on Main Street West to the station or the operations and maintenance facility on Longwood Road. But probably what we're thinking is that they would travel on Longwood Road. So there might be trains running with traffic on Longwood, but we're still looking through those or working through those details. So more to come on that.
Awesome. Well, we have a YouTube chat that I'd like to address before Richard Mallon, just asking if there's any information on ongoing development for the Pier 8 project and also the former stadium site at Bay Street in Barton. So perhaps probably an answer from Alex just on what might be happening in that area.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, those very exciting areas of the city. Lots of growth that's earmarked for both the Pier 8 and the Barton Tiffany Film District area. So I'll talk about the first one, Pier 8. The last I heard about it is, I think, for the major development that Waterfront Shores is doing, I think that's currently at LPAT to accommodate a tower of some sort. So I think it's still going through that process for the major development. But if you go there now, and I encourage anyone to go there, it's a fantastic area. You can bike or walk or drive through the development. The promenade was a separate scope, so that's currently being built, and you can see Corten steel walls of play structures, and you can see the actual promenade is built pretty much. And even a really cool, exciting yellow structure where I believe through the renderings that I saw that it's going to be a stage area, and it's it's a fantastic area as you're alluding to, I imagine, because it's just the growth. The park is there. You have Collective Arts is just down the street. Of course, the upcoming development, and then just around the corner, the West Harbour GO station is right there, which is hopefully a big draw for lots of people to visit these eventual commercial developments, and of course residential developments, and that will service these residential developments through the GO, and then the Barton Tiffany lands. Lots of exciting action there. We just heard through Eon, and fortunately ourselves, we're very lucky to be part of the process that's happening around there with 243 Queen Street North. They have their Bayfront studios up and running, and they just had major movies and continue to have major films and TV shows going through that site. And as for the lands adjacent to that in Corporation and north of Barton Street, I'm in an unfortunate position to have some great information, but also in a frustrating position, not able to shine some light on it. I can just only say that there's some exciting development that's going to be happening in that area, and just that I think all parties involved, not just ourselves in the private sector, but also the city and hopefully the public as well, want to see a better use for what's currently there, and that hopefully the burgeoning creative district in the film area is going to pop up in that fantastic area. As I mentioned, you have the Pier 8 that's just down the street, lots of development on James Street, already existing hub of James Street businesses, and all that's being fantastically supported by the all-day GO train station now, which is just in between those two areas that we mentioned. So lots of exciting stuff that's going to be happening at the Pier 8 and Barton Tiffany lines.
Excellent, thanks, Alex. Definitely an exciting area of the city. We do have another question, final question from George, and this would be for Kelly. George asked, when can we expect shovels in the ground for LRT? Obviously, probably a moving target, but if you have an idea or kind of a general timeline you could share.
Sure. So we're expecting sometime probably next spring that the utility relocation work would start. So there will be some construction activity next year, but probably the main construction component would be sometime in 2023. And that's the best I can do right now for giving details on timing. Things will continue to evolve, and hopefully we'll know more in the next few months, a little bit more about timing, but that's what we're expecting is sometime in 2023. And we expect that the construction probably will be phased, but I don't know which areas of the quarter they would start on first or anything like that yet. But certainly stay tuned for more details on that.
For sure. Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Questions we had in the chat. That's kind of all the time that we have today. I do want to thank and Jess. Also, thank you to Alex for the regular updates. We will leave you on your Wednesday today, and then look forward to a fourth quarter update. So with that, we will say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.